All right, we are here at Meetings with Masters with my beautiful, blessed friend, Catherine Ann Wilson, an incredibly inspiring woman who has survived some of the most horrible acts in her childhood, and I can't even imagine. So, Catherine, welcome. I'm honored and grateful she has come this so far. I mean, God, I'm so grateful that I know you, and you're a founder of Stop Trafficking US because of what you've been through in your life. So, welcome, Catherine Ann Wilson, from the beautiful state of Maine. Look at that gorgeous background. Thank you for being here. Please, oh my gosh, that's divine. Divine, beautiful Maine. Absolutely stunning. So, Catherine, please do tell us about you, who you are, and then I just want you to lead into where you've been and how you've grown through what you've gone through. Please share. I'm here to listen and honor who you are and elevate and celebrate you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, you are just a beautiful soul, and anybody that has met you or watched you just knows that you are bigger than life, just full out love, joy, just connectedness. I just love who you are, and getting to see you at Unblinded, that was awesome, right? We were just screaming and hugging each other. The Tony tribe has just brought together just amazing people. There's nothing like a tribe of like-minded people who are all about collaborating, sharing, evolving, learning, growing, and being totally authentic. So you embody all of that, and what a joy to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. It's so true what you say. It makes a difference. Everyone watching, who you connect and surround yourself with, it makes a difference. And I'm so lucky that I was connected with you through an incredible mastermind in the world of Tony Robbins and the tribe there, that it's just, that is always evolving into being a part of the greater good. So, Catherine, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for giving me this space to be able to share. You know, like we were talking about earlier, you know, my intention, when I do these interviews, podcasts, or local news, whenever, wherever, you know, I'm one human being and I have a story, and everybody, you know, has a story. The thing that's a little bit different, unfortunately, about my story is that I have a happy ending. You know, I went from significant surviving to thriving, and most people don't. And because sex trafficking is, you know, one of the hot topics right now, people are interested in meeting the woman who was trafficked, you know? Wow. And so that's it's kind of like, you know, back in the day, you have your gay friend.
Yeah.
And now it's like, here's the sex trafficking friend, meet Catherine, you know? Yeah. So it's an opportunity. So people wanting to know about sex trafficking gives me the opportunity to have an audience and talk about not just sex trafficking, but the whole cause and effect, and taking like this massive, complicated issue of human trafficking, sex trafficking, child sexual abuse prevention, and sort of laying it out in a way to help people see. Do you remember back in the day when they had those posters that looked like a bunch of little dots, but if you stared really closely long enough, you might see a dinosaur or, you know, the number 19. And then once you saw it, you were like, how did I not see this all the time?
You couldn't unsee it. Yeah.
You couldn't unsee it. So that's the way it is around child sexual abuse and sex trafficking. It's right there in front of everybody, and people just don't see it. You know, it's just like, so I try to take the topic, and because it's my story, I'm able to help people see it in a way that they can't unsee it. So having an opportunity like this to be able to talk to you and say, okay, let's have this conversation. And there was this guy, Vince Lombardi, and he was this very famous football coach. And if anybody knows me, they're like cracking up that I'm giving a sports analogy.
I love it. I love it. I'm a football fan.
Okay, so Vince Lombardi, when he would do his training with the football guys, I mean, these are, the highest level football players. He would hold up the football and say, "This is a football." And that's how he started every training, with the basics. This is a football. And so what I find, I've spoken countless thousands of people. I like to start with, what is sex trafficking? Because really, so many people, including law enforcement, you know, sometimes they just don't know what that term means. And so if it's okay, I'd like to start with just some of the 101 basics. And so the 101 basics would be, there's this thing called human trafficking, and it's like this umbrella. It's an umbrella term. And underneath the umbrella, there are different kinds of trafficking, and it's all called human trafficking. So human trafficking, there's organ trafficking, where people harvest other people's organs and sell them on the black market. It's organ. There's labor trafficking, which is a huge deal, and I could do a whole story just on labor trafficking, where people come over thinking they're going to have a job. The bad guys take away their visas and say, you're going to work for pennies on the dollar, or I'm going to turn you in and you're going to go to jail and you're never going to go home, or whatever. And this is like, I've heard so many stories from Homeland Security and others where nannies, and they're working for like Harvard professors, and they're a nanny who has to work 24/7, doesn't get a day off, doesn't get to go home, doesn't get to, I mean, it is slavery. And
Right.
then there's sex trafficking. And sex trafficking, the term for sex trafficking is when someone is trading sex for some sort of a gain, a sexual act, for some sort of gain, and they are being forced to do this through force, fraud, coercion. So somehow they're being manipulated. So what we would in our mind call prostitution, if somebody is under the age of 18, it is automatically defined as sex trafficking. So you cannot be a prostitute or somebody who's not being trafficked under the age of 18. In the eyes of the law, prostitution under the age of 18, regardless if you're being forced or not to, or whatever the deal is, you're sex trafficked. Now, somebody over 18 can be sex trafficked if they meet that criteria of force, fraud. So the whole umbrella of human trafficking is human beings are being forced, they're being exploited in some way to trade labor, to trade body parts from semen to whatever, and sex or some sort of sexual activity, forced, fraud, coercion. So what we know about sex trafficking is we know that the average age into entry into sex trafficking is between 12 and 14 years old. And I'm giving you statistics for the nation. There's global, but that's sort of overwhelming. And frankly, when I speak in the state of Maine, where I live, I only give the stats for Maine, because what I find is that if we start talking national or global, people say, well, that's not in my town.
Oh,
That's not in my little town. Okay. And then I say, okay, well, let's look at the statistics on your little town. It's happening in your town. Wherever drugs are being sold, human beings are being sold. And wherever human beings are being sold, drugs are being sold. So we know that sex trafficking is the #1 criminal activity in the country. It used to be that the highest revenue earner was like drugs, guns, like the top criminal activity. Now sex trafficking has reached that level. And people are like, how is this even possible? Well, the average age is 12 to 14, and we know that these kids, both boys and girls, have been sexually abused prior. So we sort of like follow the thread back. We say, okay, so this is what's going on. Well, what's the cause and effect? And the cause and effect are children who are being sexually abused are more vulnerable to these really proactive offenders who are actively, they're actively searching out kids to sell because of money. The reason why is money. So I don't know what the financials are for 2018, but I can tell you what the financials were for 2015. So if you can imagine the annual revenue of Starbucks, Nike, Google, and Intel computers combined, that's how much money
Wow.
was made in sex trafficking in 2015. We're talking about
Wow.
billions of dollars, right?
Oh.
And so there are, yes, there are more vulnerable. I say that there is no such thing as a child that's not vulnerable. I think all human beings are vulnerable. I think that all children are vulnerable. You just have to find, their manipulation spot, right?
Mm.
Certainly, we know that kids who have been in the system, kids who are in foster or juvenile detention center, kids who have dysfunctional families. Well, let's look at Epstein. Who did Epstein choose? Epstein had, I want to say Gazelle. It's not Gazelle. What's her name?
Mm.
Giselle. Anyway, so Epstein's partner in crime, the madam, she was actually,
Oh my God.
I'm just going to call her Mary. Forgive me, I'm having a menopausal moment. But anyway, so Mary would find girls in, West Palm Beach, Florida, on the other side of the tracks, on the other side of the bridge, lower income area.
Yeah, the more vulnerable ones.
The more vulnerable ones, and then she'd look for attractive, vulnerable, and then they would manipulate them, and they'll be manipulated through love or fear. So sometimes girls and boys are boyfriended or girlfriended in, meaning a good looking. So another man will have the boy pursue good looking girls, just like Mary was used to go and pursue good looking girls, bring them in and maybe sexually exploit them, meaning get them drunk, give them a drug, put them in an embarrassing, compromising position. They're being sexual with somebody, they're being videoed while they're incoherent, and then they're being blackmailed. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to show this film. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to kill your parents. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to do this to your sister. If you don't, you know what I mean? So they get brought in that way. There's a lot of different ways that kids are brought in. But again, the genesis of sex trafficking, the genesis of kids with addictions, the genesis of kids in jail, the genesis of adult women. 94% of all the women in prison were sexually abused. The genesis of so much starts with kids being sexually abused when they're younger. So for me, it was, and my personal story, and if anybody wants to hear like the whole, story, I've got a couple videos that I can give you, and you can put in the comment section if you want. So they can see the hour-long horror story of the whole thing.
Yeah,
but a happy ending.
Yeah, thank God. Look at you, because I do really want to highlight your story. We are gonna need more time for that, though. Are there snippets that is it possible to give some of that? And we can go we can go as long as we need to. But I think
so. I'll give you the the links so people can see that. But for me, I'm not atypical, which I love that, because I don't want anybody to feel like they're beyond like their children are safe. I don't want anybody to believe that their children are completely manipulation proof, because they're not. You know, for me, my mom and dad were happily married. I was wanted, I was loved, I was welcomed with open arms. I was the first grandchild, and everybody was excited to have me. But when my brother came along, he had severe asthma, and like the kind where they would tell my mom and dad, we don't think he's going to make it through the night kind of asthma. He spent his first 10 Christmases in the ICU unit, in an oxygen tent. So it was serious. So my mom and dad were paying attention to my little brother because they had to. That was the right and appropriate thing to do. But predators are kind of like hyenas circling around the zebras looking for the weakest link, right? And so a school administrator in my first grade, would come and take me out of class, bring me into his office, and sexually abuse me. So my sexual abuse started in first grade by a school administrator. And then there's like this phenomenon that happens, and we don't have time to go on that either. But once a child has been sexually abused, it's kind of like a drop of blood in a school of sharks. You know, it's like if anybody in a 20-mile radius was inclined to be a pedophile, here they come. So then it was a friend of the family, and then it was the babysitter, and then it was my uncle, and then it was my aunt, and then it was, now I'm behaving differently in school, and now I'm promiscuous, and I'm being bullied, and now I'm starting to run away. So I ran away from 12 to 17 years old. I lived on the street. First, I would try to stay with people that I thought were friends. I mean, I knew they weren't really friends, but places that I thought I could go to. And then once I was with them, then it was their dad would pull me out of the bed in the middle of the night, or their big brother would pull me out of the. So that was like a normal part of my childhood. So I knew that that wasn't safe at 12 and 13 years old. So then I would break into apartment buildings. I would sleep outside in kids' forts in the woods. I would break into wherever. I mean, I got arrested for shoplifting a towel at Dillard's so that I could take a bath in one of the places I had broken into. I stopped menstruating because I was so malnourished that my body, I didn't have enough. I was starving. I was literally starving. So when I was 15, and these two older girls, I had been choked to unconsciousness. I have a little short-term memory issue from some of the hits to the head that I've had. Your head thrown against the dash of a car, or against a wall, or picked up by your neck and choked to unconsciousness. Hog-tied wrists and ankles, and raped by crazy people for long periods of time. So all of that. So when I was 15, and these older girls were like, hey, you could have food, you could have a place to stay. We have sex, but we have boyfriends, and they make sure that we get paid, and they make sure we're safe. And they didn't say prostitution. They didn't say pimp. And frankly, I was only kind of half listening because they fed me macaroni and cheese with peas and tuna fish.
Oh my God.
And I was so hungry. Like, I don't know if you've ever been so hungry that when you eat something, you can like feel it, and you can feel the sugar hitting your body. But it was like, you had me at, are you hungry?
Yeah.
And so it's a whole, we talk about synchrodestiny, and when you're older and you have some life under your belt and you look back, you can totally see how God intervenes, how there's like these wonderful things that happen where something awful could have happened, but something less awful happened. And I can look back and see all these beautiful moments in my life that I was protected from even worse things that could have happened to me.
Really?
When I was 17, I escaped, and the escape story is miraculous. And then my father passed away. So, the first well, I'll just call it 20. It was 17. You know, first 17 years of my life was horrific. It was the Lifetime channel, you know? I mean,
can I ask you
it
something?
was,
How did your
sure.
parents, who loved you, even though they were taking care of their son, like, and that was happening in your school, like, what happened that you were able to run away? What
You
happened?
know, I don't, I love world religion. And I actually wanted to be a unity minister. And I took a couple of years of the prerequisite classes to become a minister. And then I didn't have the full 4-year tuition cash. I had land, but I didn't have cash. So I couldn't do it. I was redirected. But one of the cool things about studying Bible is you also learn what was going on at the time, right? You learn what politically was going on, what kind of drought or famine was going on. I mean, you learn more of the whole picture. And
Yeah.
so for me looking back, I can kind of see this whole the perfect storm that was happening. We're talking about the 70s when it was a big push for, and women were actually shamed if they stayed home with their children. They were shamed. You need to get out and work and bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan, right? So divorce was rising, women were working. So my mom and dad started to have a strain. They lost my baby brother. So I was born, my brother was born, and then another little boy was born, Stephen. He was 6 months old when he suffocated in the crib. He died. That was a devastating blow to my mom. And then my sister was born, and then mom started going to work. My parents' marriage, fell apart. We didn't know at the time that my dad had malignant melanoma from his head to his toes. When I was 17, he died within 3 months. I mean, he was covered. So his personality started to change. Mom left. So
Got it.
there was lots of stuff going on at that particular era,
Gotcha.
from my mom, from my dad. And so all these different things where I just fell through the cracks. And
Understood.
and this is what happens. So we know that like everybody has a story, and sometimes kids fall through the crack. And if I got hit by a bus, Gina, I would really want people to look up adverse childhood experiences. So if they would just Google adverse childhood experiences, one of the top three things that would show up is a study that was done by Kaiser Permanente and the Center for Disease Control.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll say, it's called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, CDC. This amazing research that was done, like how come if you take two people, both the same age, and they go to war, they go to Afghanistan, they both see the same amount of action, they both come back. One person comes untethered, and the other person, needs to get a little help, but then thrives. Like,
Yeah.
how come? And
Yeah.
what we learned is one of them, if they had a high ACE score, which they can look at on the adverse childhood experiences, if they had a lot of trauma as a kid, it makes them susceptible to like this, to be less resilient later on. Did they have at least one person supporting them? So if somebody has a lot of trauma as a child, boy, they are just set up to not be able to handle as much,
Mm.
if they didn't have that support as a kid. What we know with addictions, with the opioid crisis, we know that people who have a high ACE score are more susceptible to not being able to tolerate blood pressure medication, um, epileptic medication, blood pressure medication, and ding, 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 pain medication. So it's being said we don't have an opioid epidemic, we have a high ACE score epidemic. We have a lot of kids being abused. Huffington Post said that the rate of our child abuse right now is at a pandemic level. The real pandemic is child sexual abuse. It is. So what the Maine cyber crimes against children, we were speaking to a bunch of forensic nurses at a hospital, the detectives and myself, and the detectives told the nurses, if every police officer in the country, like the whole United States, if everybody just stopped and focused just on cyber crimes against children, sextortion, child pornography, that sort of thing, if everybody stopped and just did that, we would not put a dent. We would not put a dent in the amount of child sexual abuse going on the internet. So prostitution is as old as time. People sexually attracted to children is as old as time.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
so offenders need three things in order for successful molestation of a child. You need to be someone who's inclined to sexually abuse. You need to be attracted to children, either because you were born with that attraction or because it was done to you and you want to do it to others. So the inclination to offend, right? The desire to be sexual with a child. They need a vulnerable child. And as I said earlier, what child isn't vulnerable? And then the third thing is access. So access is the thing why the wildfire has gone at with the internet. Kids used to be able to be safe in their home, but
Yes.
now a child logging in without parental controls, without being educated, is like taking your child. How old is your
My youngest
youngest?
is 16. He's 16.
Okay, so even at 16, if you took a 16-year-old and you took him to the worst city and the highest crime rate and dropped him off at a park in the middle of the night, that is how safe your child is every time they're gaming without parental controls and without being educated. The predator is right there. Access, access, access. So last fall, I did a 3-day faith-based child sexual abuse prevention conference. And I brought in a national expert, one of the country's top experts on child abuse prevention and child abuse. This guy's brilliant. His name is Victor Veith with the Zero Abuse Project. So Victor was my expert speaker. We educated 80 local police and law enforcement here. It was a huge success. Loved it. I raised $25,000 in advance so that I wouldn't have to charge anybody to attend. We offered CEUs. It was fantastic. But at the end of the conference, I said, Victor, what can I do? I'm one person. Here I am in Maine. How can I make the greatest difference? How can I help the most amount of children? And he said, educate the faith-based organizations, the temples, synagogues, churches. Catholic Church is already on this, but they need to update their policies and procedures to decrease access. Because right now the offenders are flocking to the faith-based, taking advantage of their forgiving nature
Yes.
and access to all these children, right? So they need policies to prevent that access. So that is my 2020 project. Is we already have a template of those policies and procedures. Now I'm finding out through the insurance companies to see if I can motivate them through money. Will they get a decreased rate if they update their policies and procedures? So that's the big thing. And then, of course, that was September. And then October, the White House invited me to come and be a part of a bunch of faith leaders across the nation to talk about sex trafficking and child sexual abuse prevention. So that was a huge, huge honor. Actually, I have a conference call this afternoon with the White House. It's like, it takes a village, and we all have to work together to prevent access and for everybody to be a superhero, not only in doing their own work, but also, because that's ongoing, don't we know? But
Every
also just the children that are in your realm. Just like every time you go to church or whatever religious, every time you go wherever, camps, clubs, neighbors, gatherings, wherever there are children, you have to be vigilant and watching out for that guy or gal who likes to stay close to the kids. And it blows my mind when people are surprised that it's the Boy Scout leader, it's the camp counselor, it's the guy down the street. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Where do you think, people who are into children, don't you think they're going to like take up professions and hobbies that put them near children? Hello.
Of course.
You know,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. right? Like beyond heartbreaking. It's so, it doesn't take just a village. It takes our world to step up, right?
Well, it does. And now with the pandemic, we know. So here's what we know about who protects children. Um, so I was recently on a call with the district attorney and the Department of Health and Human Services, and they had this great graph showing, the last few years and people like teachers, first responders, police, neighbor, parent, friend, that sort of thing. And teacher teachers are like the top of the list on who identifies abuse and turns it in, right?
Oh, okay.
So now with COVID,
Oh,
all these kids who, who's so domestic violence, child abuse, child pornography, like this is a perfect storm. This is a perfect storm. Suicide is up, mental illness is up, stress is up. When people who are inclined to abuse drugs and are under stress, who do you think's getting the bunt of that? And there's nobody to see them. So people like Victor Veith are teaching teachers who are on Zoom what to look for. Like when you're doing Zoom with your grandchildren or with your students or whoever you're teaching anything to look for the marks, because kids will block their face, to
oh,
look for little drops of blood on their ear, look for patches of bald because they get pulled by the hair.
oh,
And then what, so you see these things, and then what do? The thing that I hear the most from people is, what if I'm wrong? And what I'll tell you is that 98% of the time when somebody has a gut feeling that something's not right, even if they don't see anything, if their gut says this relationship, something's not right, this, something isn't right, you're right. And if you're not a mandated reporter, you can report anonymously. So if you're wrong, it's okay.
yeah, better.
If you're right, you gotta call. And our law enforcement are so overrun, they're overwhelmed with calls. So they're going to check in on, it's kind of like triage in the hospital. If you've ever have to go to the emergency room, if you have a less important thing, you're going to wait for hours while they deal with the ones that are more serious than you. So
Yeah,
when you call your Department of Health and Human Services, or you call the police or whatever on abuse that you think might be happening, if they've only got 2 calls on that kid, that's a low priority. But if everybody who feels something calls and they've got 10 calls on that kid, it moves them up the list.
yeah, that makes
So
sense.
it's really important to call. Yeah.
Really important. And someone just said, I'm going to unshare this. And thank you for saying that. I can't tell what your name is, but please, everyone, share this, because this is so important for everyone to hear. I mean, there's a lot of messages, Catherine, which I know that you'll have a chance to look through, and people have questions. And somebody, Nancy from my high school said, is this conference available to see online or purchase a CD or something? I think it was when you're talking about, is it Victor Veet?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Tell me
So
what
can
you
you
want.
type this? Type this: Victor, Victor, Vieth, Vieth, Zero Abuse Project.
Spell out zero.
Zero Abuse, Abuse Project. Okay. Now, when you go to his website, you're going to see tons of free information, like tons of free information. Also, if you go to Darkness to Light, I think
Darkness.
it's darknesstolight.org, another fantastic one. Um, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have videos that kids can watch at various ages. And frankly, if you just Googled, how do I talk to my 10-year-old about being safe from abuse, you're going to get
a lot
Like
of
this
information.
whole huge thing. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of great information. Um, yeah, yeah. And then the blue campaign is the Homeland Security. The blue campaign, um, that is Homeland Security's section on human trafficking. And there's some really great videos and educational things there. As far as cyber, all things cyber related, Ashton Kutcher and his ex-wife Demi Moore created this organization called Thorn, Thorn. And let me tell you, like, I wish my website looked like theirs. It's an amazing website. He is amazing, and there's great cyber information on there.
Ashton Kutcher and her name again? Mila Kut.
Demi. So actually, you don't need to say Ashton Kutcher. Just say THORN.org.
.org. Okay.
Thorn. Yeah, Thorn. THORN.org.
Got
And
it.
my website is stoptraffickingus.org.
That's already in the top, but yes.
And if people are enjoying this and they want to reach out to me, my phone number is 207-752-4226. And you can text me. And if there's any way that I can help you, I'm certainly willing to help.
Say that again because for some reason it cut off the numbers, the first part.
207-752-4226.
4226. And it's wonderful that you give your number. Oh,
Yep.
it says equal, guys, but just ignore the equal sign. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the screen and look at what I was typing,
Yeah.
but I'll fix that later.
Yeah.
Catherine, I mean, there's no, I can't even fathom what you have been through in your life. I do still want to know, if possible, that you could share how you escaped, because if there's a small chance that if all of you are sharing this out in the world and somebody sees this and they are somehow able to hear about it some way, and they might get a sense of how to possibly escape. And here's one thing I want to say, and I think that you'll also speak on this. So that's one thing I'd like to know. And another thing is, let's talk to our children about body shame
Oh, right.
and feelings of, I always wonder, and I mentioned this to you before. I came from a very modest household. My dad was like would run to the TV and turn off people kissing on the soap operas when I was a little kid. That was him, and like that's fine, right? But it was very. So I came from a very modest household. How does that affect like a child? And then you have children that then there's parents that are very sexual in their homes. I remember going to people's homes that I'd be babysitting and they'd have Playboy magazines hanging around and all of that. Of course, so I know that could be a way longer conversation, but at least two of those things I'd love to hear, because maybe there's some way people can take it into consideration in their own homes if they see any signs of children, cousins, nieces, whatever. I don't know. You know what I'm saying, right?
I do. And I have so much to say on that.
Yeah, I do. I know we
Right.
need more. We need
So let me say this.
Mm-hmm.
So shame, okay,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, panic, shame, depression. We're an organic being, okay? We're organic. And not only are those emotions in our mind, but they become a part of our cells.
Yes.
Okay, it lives in our body. So when I call it surviving, like anybody who's been to war knows that the shit doesn't hit the fan till you come home. When you come home and you're safe, that's when the post-traumatic starts. That's when the night terrors start. That's right. So surviving, the healing journey, the first 17 years, trauma. The next 20 years is the therapy, like tons of therapy. It takes so long, right? Um, but that lives in your body. So not only was it psychotherapy that I did, I also had to do energy work and different to get it out of my body. But
Yeah.
women who are pregnant, their babies are swimming around in whatever unresolved issues they have. And
Right.
then they give birth, and that child has their own stuff, and has the stuff from the mom on the baby, right?
Oh yeah.
So this generational trauma that gets passed down, not only in how you behave, and there's a fabulous therapist, his name is Terry Real, he's out of Cambridge, phenomenal guy, and actually his website, so Terry, Terry, and last name Real. Actually, a lot of people in the Tony tribe have used him for therapy. On his website, you can put in your zip code, and they'll tell you who's been trained in your area, so you know what therapist to see. So, and he does all kinds of stuff with the generational trauma. So,
Good
as
to know.
as parents, however we were taught about sex, what we make up, whatever abuse we've gone through, there is no way you've gone through a rape or you've gone through shaming from your parents to you, because they're passing down their stuff too. However, their parents were and their parents, it's
Yeah.
all being passed down. So now we have children and we so much want to do the right job. We want to take care of our kids. And so we see little Johnny, who's 7, with an erection, playing with himself, watching Walt Disney show. And do we scream at him and put that thing away? And do we even call a penis and a vagina? There was one little girl who was trying to tell her preschool teacher that somebody was touching her vagina and that it hurt her, but she was kept calling her vagina a cupcake.
Oh
And
my
it
gosh.
took it took longer because she didn't know what to call it. It's a vagina,
Right,
right?
because her
It's a
parents taught her to
penis.
say cupcake.
Right,
Right.
right. So when I get asked to do large groups like I don't know, Knights of Columbus, 100 staff at a school or whatever, I bring in my dream team. So I bring in somebody from Homeland Security, somebody from the district attorney's office, and I bring in Jennifer Wiesner. Jennifer Wiesner was the first female sex therapist in the state of Maine. Her tagline is trying to get rid of the shame in Maine. And
Wow.
she teaches dads how long can they snuggle with their daughter. Because dads are like, am I going to make my son gay because I'm scratching my 8-year-old's back while we're laying on the couch snuggling and watching TV? Is it wrong for me to take a shower with my son? Is it wrong for me to take a shower with my daughter? What do
Right.
I do when I see my daughter, humping the stair rail? Or what do I do when my son has an erection? How do I teach my 14-year-old how to go through school with this constant erection? And Jennifer just very calmly teaches her 2 boys and teaches parents how to help the boys put a towel. It's like matter of fact. It's like, how do you handle your hand? How do you handle your foot? There's no shame.
Right.
It's, you're talking about it. And by the way, the answer to when do you stop showering and when do you stop snuggling on the couch, when either one of you feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If that is 5 years old, if that's 12 years old, that's when you stop. It is just such a beautiful, when you take the time to get educated and learn sort of how to be and see where you're hung up yourself, you can create your home to be a safe, beautiful place where these things are talked about in a beautiful way, an appropriate way, with appropriate boundaries and appropriate, yeah.
I mean, that's really, it just has to be so important. It really, this makes so much sense because then maybe, just maybe, you, meaning you, the overall, everybody, anybody who watching this has the opportunity to stop something that could evolve into something you think is innocent, like saying pee-pee instead of penis, or saying, something like that.
Right.
You don't think about it because you think it's innocent, and you don't want you don't want your child walking around.
Well, and we don't want to think the worst of people. So I'll give you a real life story. So I have a girlfriend who's 60, and so her and her siblings, adult siblings, went to their mom's house for, their annual get together in Maine. And the women were talking, the mom and the daughters were talking, sisters were talking about their brother's second wife, and that she has a 14-year-old daughter. And they were noting that he spends a lot of time with the 14-year-old, and that, hey, did you know that they went camping alone together? And there they are, they're on the hammock by themselves, and they're having this conversation that
Mm,
something's not quite right. But nobody wanted to think the worst of the brother. Nobody wanted to think anything. The little girl was 14 years old. 2 years later, he's arrested for child molestation because they didn't talk about it, because people aren't educated like somebody going to the brother and saying, hey, we, your sisters, are noticing that you're behaving in a way that's causing an alarm in us. We're seeing red flags, and we need to know if you're sexually attracted to this little girl, your stepdaughter, or um, have you done anything? And let's nip this in the bud now.
yeah.
Right? And then going to the little girl and saying, hey, we care about you. We love having you in this family. You didn't do anything wrong, but sometimes you can have a new older man in your life, and you can romanticize like what you see on TV, and it can feel really grown up. And we just want to talk to you and let you know that that's not how it's supposed to be. And has he touched and then talk to the mom. And like, there's a way to do this in a beautiful way. And so one of the Homeland Security guy that does international crimes against children work, the guy is amazing. He actually goes to other countries, poses as a pedophile, and then the SWAT team like comes in. And anyway, he's amazing.
God.
So I said, what can I say when I'm speaking to people? What should I say? What's an important point that you would like me to share? And he said, give them a tool. So for instance, right now you're hearing me, and whoever else is hearing me. Okay. And so hold up your pinky, and whoever's watching, hold up your pinky. Come on, hold it up. All right. Do you solemnly swear that if you see something that gives you that wormy feeling that something's not right, do you solemnly swear right here and right now that you will do something, you will say something, you will take some sort of action when you get that feeling?
I do.
Okay. All right. Now that you've done that, now, wherever you go, if you see something and you get that wormy feeling, you can go up to the appropriate person and you can say, I was in a seminar, and in that seminar, we were taught what the red flags were, and we gave a solemn promise that if we saw anything that was a red flag that we talked about, that we had to say something. And so I'm letting you know that I'm seeing something, and I want to know, are you safe? Are you okay? How can I help you? Here's my phone number. Or you call your local district attorney. You call your police. You call. Even if it's anonymous, you do something. You do something. And I'll give you another example.
Mm,
So before the COVID, all the kids would go to the mall, right? So all the little, all the, I'll just say girls, but boys too,
sure.
go to the mall. And so here's a whole little pack of 13-year-old, 14-year-old girls running around the mall. So an offender, somebody who is hunting, will watch the girls, and then will put himself near the girls and then bump into one of them on purpose. So here's two responses. So he bumps into a girl, or she, doesn't matter. It could be a boy or a girl, a man or a woman doing this, bumps into the girl and says, Gina, it says, you have beautiful brown eyes. Oh my gosh, they're just stunning. Now, Gina either says, no, I don't, or Gina says, yeah, I got them from my mom, and then scoots off. just from that interaction, that predator knows which one is more vulnerable and
Oh,
susceptible to praise to hook them in,
oh,
right?
yeah.
So let's say that I'm with my little pack of girls because they don't go anywhere without me. I just roll that way. So I'm with the girls at the mall and I see a little girl that's a friend of my daughter and I know what her financial income is and she's got a Coach purse. She's got a little outfit on and she's with an older guy. Something's not right, right? And I don't recognize this guy and something isn't right. So I'm going to put on my superhero outfit. I'm going to walk over to Gina and I'm going to say, hey. And Gina's like, because I just caught you with a
Yeah.
very expensive purse and a guy. And I'm going to say, Gina, I just got off the phone with your mom. Like, I'm so glad I saw you. She told me that if I saw you here at the mall, that I was supposed to bring you home. I guess they're doing something at your house. Oh, hi. Who are you? And I take Gina and I get the fuck out of there, right?
Yeah.
And then I bring Gina to her mom and dad. And I also, if I can, get the license plate to Mr. Man's car. I'm going to do that too, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just have to be sorry about the cuss word, but um, right? So there are things that you can do that are subtle. There there are things that you can do to make a difference. It just takes 30 seconds of bravery. Do you have time for one more story?
Yes, and I would, but let me ask you something. Can we literally do the part two tomorrow at 4? Because we'll talk about it. But I think there's way more. Like this needs to continue to get out. So yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.
We're gonna say we can talk about that after because this is
All
so.
right, so I'll just give you a quick story. So my husband Charlie and I are. It's summer in Maine. It's beautiful. We're sitting outside at one of our favorite places to eat, and I see a full table, and it's obviously like a family that are eating together. And there's a woman who is very pregnant. Okay, she's gonna pop any second, and she's got this adorable, probably 2, maybe 3-year-old little girl with red, like Shirley Temple curls.
Aw.
And she's just bopping around, and all the grown-ups are sitting around, and the mother is just like, please God, let me have this child, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, dying. Yeah,
And then there's a guy next to her. I don't know if it's her husband. I don't know who the guy is, but he keeps trying to engage with the child. The grown-ups are engaging with each other, but he keeps trying to engage with the child. Now, my spidey senses are just like, and my husband has stopped trying to talk to me because he knows I am in stealth mode. Like, so, like my gut is going crazy, and
yeah,
I'm watching this, and the guy takes a toy. He's trying to kiss her, and she says no, and then she wants her toy, and so she's like, "Can I have the toy?" And the guy says, "If you give me a if you give me a kiss, I'll give you the toy." And the little girl said no. She would rather not have a toy, hello, than kiss this guy. Now, what do? I see a situation, I feel a situation.
yeah.
What in God's name do you do in that situation? So, and this is like on the fly, like I didn't think I'm in the moment, right? I'm in the moment. So, I figured this chick's got to pee sooner or later.
Yeah.
She's pregnant, you know. And so I wait for her to go to the bathroom. So she takes the little girl, she goes to the bathroom. I pull out my Stop Trafficking US card, and then I wait for her to come back from the bathroom. And then I meet her before she gets to the table. I jump up, I go over, and Charlie's like, "Oh my God, what is she going to do?"
Yeah.
And I go over to her, and this is just acting, right? And so I say, "Hey, excuse me, I just have to tell you, first of all, congratulations on your baby. And second of all, you must be like the world's best mother." Like I was watching that guy beside you, like totally trying to kiss your daughter, and like even trying to bribe her with a toy, and she said no, and she kept saying no. And it was just amazing to me what a great mother you must be to have taught such great boundaries to your little daughter. Wow, you're fantastic. Here's my card. I teach people how to do what you already did. You're amazing. Now, the truth is, she wasn't paying attention at all. She didn't even have a freaking idea what was going on. She was in her own world, right? Like exhausted, very pregnant women are, or like busy women are like moms who are multitasking, or moms who are tired. We're not paying attention. So that was how I was able to engage in a safe way and just let her know.
That is, wow. That is such a powerful access, Catherine, because otherwise she might have had her defenses up, right? Because she might have felt like, how could I miss that? And then there's the people that think that cannot be true. She doesn't know what she's seeing, or I can't even deal with this, so I'm going to pretend she never said it. Who does she think she is, right? Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I feel like that's a normal thing, especially, you know, my generation and my childhood. And, you know, it was really good, but, you know, there was something that happened in my childhood that it was like, but it was shoved under the rug then, right? It was shoved under the rug. People didn't talk about it. So I feel like back then, and in your childhood too, it was like, it was ignored. Like, that's not happening, right? No, that's not, or it's not. Please tell me if I'm wrong.
You have to protect your children, right? So your job as a parent, and frankly, I think your job as a human being on this planet, right? Your job on this planet is to protect the vulnerable. And if we were abusing animals the way we're abusing children, oh my God. I mean, the outcry, it would just be like, I can't even imagine, right? But for some reason, and the reason why I think it's about the children is I think it hits so close to home. Like, we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to cry. I mean, it's just, we have to change the societal dial on that. We have to change the norm. And the way we change that norm is to start talking about it. So 40 years ago, do you know what domestic violence was called? Do you know what the term for domestic violence was 40 years ago?
No.
Marriage.
Huh.
Okay.
Seriously.
So if you're 40 years ago, if your husband was beating the crap out of you and you called the police, they would come and ask you, what did you do to piss him off? You know, go stay with your mom until he calms down, right? If you went to your church, the church would say, let's do marriage encounter, right? And now, oh my gosh, like, that is just socially, like, you know, if you were trans, if you were bi, if you were gay, your family could send you to a sanitarium where they would give you electric shock treatments.
Oh my God.
If you were depressed, if you had depression, your family could send you away. It was shame. And now there's so much Prozac and antidepressants being taken. There's an extra water filter on all water systems in every city because it's in our drinking water. People urinate. It's in our. So we have gay pride, right? Instead of just July, they're like talking about taking it to the next month. We had a semi-black president, right? Domestic violence is not cool, right? So how do we change the societal norm on child abuse? The same way. We have to talk about it. We have to own our own story without shame. This is what happened to me. It's not who I am. Take responsibility for our own healing, our own growth. The answer to healing is not out there. It's right here. The way out is in, right? Do your work, learn how to parent, break that generational, thing, and say something. 30 seconds of bravery. It's not easy. You just have to do it.
Yes. I mean, thank you. Gosh, Catherine, this is beyond valuable, because if we can stop it now, if we can change it now at the youngest
right
level, and now as a parent, Now look in at yourself. If there's someone out there at all watching this, or someone you know that you're concerned about that might act a little off, and you think to yourself, gosh, maybe I hugged that child a little too much. What do I need to look at? I mean, I don't know. I'm not the pro. I am not an authority on this. I had a really beautiful childhood. I don't know. I had one little thing happen that I barely remember, but it's like, and that doesn't matter because that's the past. Now is now. What is now is that we have the opportunity to change it. We have the opportunity to make a difference.
And I believe that education is the key. So when I was 50, I was getting ready to turn 50. I didn't talk about my past. My past was on a need to know basis. I'd spent 20 years going through it, 20 years healing it. I was making a 6-figure income. I bought my dream house. Like, I was living the dream. And I'd always done volunteer work, but I had never done volunteer work with kids. And I went to the local juvenile detention center and on the girls unit, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to me 35 years ago is still happening. And I believe in people. I believe in people. And I believe if they were educated, like, people just don't get it. And if they did, like the poster we were talking about it, if we could get them to see it and not unsee it, then we could really make a significant impact. And here's what we're up against. There's a local women's group here in Maine. And I applied for a $10,000 grant for that conference. They would not give me the money. Here's why. They said, we don't believe that educating people is going to stop an offender from having sex with a child. Now, I have world people. I have people who are the top in their field in the world. Dr. David Finkelhor out of the University of New Hampshire, world researcher, crimes against children, world. And he said, and Terry Real said, Catherine's work, the education through prevention is vital. Like, we have to do prevention. Education is the way, but the level of ignorance is profound. So it's really grassroots level at this point. And it's just me. Like, I have devoted the last 6 years with my nonprofit, not eligible for grants or anything. I've got little old ladies that send me $20 in the mail, and I pass that on to the survivors. So I work with survivors, and I do at-risk stuff with the kids, but really the lion's share of the work I do is education. It's vital. So this type of thing, but with my dream team, everywhere. And then the faith-based organization project, that is the big project for 2020. So that's what I do. And I hope that this was valuable to you and the viewers.
Beyond valuable. There's, I mean, no words. Do you think honestly that we can continue tomorrow? Because
do you see my she shed? Can you see? I don't know if you can see my she shed. So
yes,
I finally got my she shed, and that's where I'll be doing Zooms. That's where I'll be. So I also work with women, and I help them. So I do some coaching that way, besides all the other stuff. So this is where I will be doing my Zooms, and since I can't, I've had to pivot like everybody else. So the state of Maine asked if I would do a lecture. So one of the lectures that I did is on the State of Maine website, which is really cool, but now it's all on Zoom. So tomorrow the electrician will be here to put in the heat pump. It'll be heating and cooling up there. So if I can get him out of here before 4 o'clock, I'm yours. If not, we'll find another day. I promise you.
We will find another day because I think we need to hear more. I want your escape story, and I want to hear more of the important messages people need to hear, how to to prevent and get out there and notice and make the change and speak up. So I thank you beyond words. I love you, my friend. You are.
I love you too.
You are magical. I mean, just look at the brilliance of this woman who has come through so much, and you're making a huge impact. So thank you. And I can't wait for you to see the messages. I'm off to meet my family for dinner and hug them and but talk to my
I can't see any of the messages.
You'll see them when we hang up on Facebook. So I can barely can't tell who says them all. Sometimes I can, but you'll see them on my Facebook page. It's on my Stepping into Your Superpowers group page. It's on my LinkedIn and it's on a YouTube direct into my YouTube. And I ask that you guys all support Catherine's mission, support stoptraffickingus.org, correct? I put it in here that way at the top as well. Let's make these changes for everyone as much as we can now. So Catherine, thank you.
I love you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's a privilege to be here. I'm totally blessed. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad. Okay. I love you. Bye, everybody.
I love you too. Bye, everybody.